comment, and subscribe. Share this video right now with somebody that needs to be a part of this conversation. I'll be right back. Excited to have you guys tuned in. I have a special guest and a special show, and I'm so excited that you're here. I can't wait to share with you, but more importantly, I can't wait for you guys to be a part of the conversation. As always, your questions and your comments really drive what we talk about, the depth and the direction in which we go on this show. And so I'm so excited to have you here. Now, as I always say, for those of you that are new, you know I say this is my little line. I'm an amateur at this, but I have to have a little tagline. So it is 9 o'clock here on the East Coast. Okay? It's 9 o'clock, which means hopefully the kids are down and that you can lift your cups or your glasses up. Now, I am drinking, again, tea this evening, but it is up to you, whatever you prefer to drink around this 9 o'clock or 5 o'clock in your imaginary mind cocktail hour. Enjoy yourself. It is almost Friday. I call it pre-Friday, so why not celebrate? Cheers. Now, if this is your first time, you can catch me every Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. New topic, sometimes guest, sometimes it's me, sometimes it's formative, sometimes it's funny. Sometimes I think it's funny, and maybe it's not. But why not just tune in and check it out? You never know. You may get a couple of giggles. That's my job. So for those of you that don't know, I am an educator by profession. I have my own consulting company where I travel around the United States supporting school improvement efforts for Title I schools specifically. But my main goal is to ensure that high quality education is being provided for students all across the globe. And so I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy having the opportunity to sit and share with you, as well as bring in guests that can share their expertise with you in the field related to education, be it directly or indirectly. And so tonight we're going to talk to somebody that has a great platform. And why not bring in this topic during, I call it International Women's Week or month, although it was just Monday. They want to give it just one day, but I think women need more than a day. I think they're deserving of it more than a day. They need weeks, they need months, they need years, because they are the foundation of not just this country, of the globe. Where would we be without women? I love them. I love them. I came from one. So let's get started tonight. I am going to let my guest introduce herself, but I'm so excited to have her. She is all the way from Calgary. Guys, I have gone international. I have an international guest. Watch
Woo!
out, people. This is no joke. I'm so excited to have her. So without further ado, welcome my special guest tonight, Miss Aime Hutton, and I'm gonna allow her to introduce herself. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait for everybody who's watching to listen and hear from you this evening. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. Hello, Mr. Dr. Christopher. It's good to see you.
Good to
to
see
meet
you as
you.
well.
And I agree. Yes, International Women's Day should be a month, should be a year. We all came from a woman, regardless of what we are now and what your mother was then. You know, some moms were amazing, some moms were not, and we all know
That's
that.
right.
So just being grateful for being here and on with International Women's Month. And yeah, so I'm in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And to give you a little bit of geography in case you need some support in that, Alberta is above the state of Montana. So that's where Alberta is, that's where I am. So I'm closer to the West Coast, but not right on the West Coast. And so about me, besides being in Calgary and being female and identifying as female, I, one who grew up experiencing bullying. And, back in the 80s, it wasn't called that. It was.
Oh, we lost her. Give her a minute. She's going to come back. She's going to come back. She has a tremendous story, guys, and I think that you all need to hear this story and her expertise. So while we're waiting for her to get back in here, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, stop what you're doing right now. Share this video with somebody. We're talking about safe spaces for women in education. She's back. Don't worry. She is back. She's here. Technology can be horrible, but it can also be your best friend. So
okay.
I was just giving them time to share this video with other people, and I'm going to let you continue right where you left off.
Sure. Thank you. I hope we're doing okay still. It's kind of wonky. So being bullied between grades 3 and grade 8, that wasn't just 1 year. That was 6 years. 6 years of verbal harassment, of verbal assault, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and even one time being physically assaulted. And that story was, I was in grade 7, and I was in the gym locker room, and I was having some struggles, and a girl came up behind me and grabbed me by my bra strap and flung me around in circles. And when she let go, I went flying to a locker. And battered and bruised, I didn't know who I could trust. I couldn't trust the teachers because she didn't step in to help me at all. And the teachers throughout my growing up years, I know teachers are amazing and I know teachers are doing the best they can. Yet back in those days, in the 1980s, it was a different culture, a different time period. So that's kind of a bit of my story. And, the name calling, I sometimes even today as a almost 45-year-old woman, the days of thinking I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm ugly, I'm retarded, and because that's what I was called for 6 years.
Wow. Now, that was a short version of that story. And so
Yes.
I know you could go a whole lot deeper into the trauma of bullying as a young woman. And even as a young Black man, I have many stories that I've shared a couple on this platform about bullying in school because I was an athlete, but I was also a kid that was into the arts. And so as a young Black male, football was cool, but singing in the choir was not cool. Playing soccer was not very favorable in my community at that time. And so while the level of harassment I endured, but only because I was very confident in who I was at the time, it really didn't bother me, but I knew it was bullying. Like you said, it didn't have it wasn't that name at that time, but I knew it wasn't right, and I knew it didn't feel good. And I knew it was a judgment on who I was as a person. And so I really want to dive into this space of talking about creating safe spaces for young women. So share a little bit about why this is so important that we create safe spaces for young women in education.
Yeah, so as I just shared part of my story, like I didn't have a safe space in elementary school. Between grades 3 and grade 8, there was no safe space for me to go to at all. And that's why I want to see teachers facilitating safe spaces in their school across the country and internationally across the globe. And, you know, there's another reason why I am very, very passionate about this, and it goes into my high school days when I actually was singled out, segregated by a teacher. I went to the teacher for help. I was in a senior credit of biology course, and went to the class, was having some struggles, day 1, day 2, went to the teacher help, and he saw me taking notes and writing notes, and he said, "Amy, you're left-handed." Yeah. "You'll never pass my class." That's what he said to me.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. Can I get a tutor? Or, you know, is there someone else that can help me? No. His answer was, yeah, no. So I small, not seen, not heard, not safe. And I got quiet till the end of the semester when it was anatomy and physiology of the human body. And because I was a lifeguard instructor, I had interest in this area. So similar to you, I was on the swim team, and I was also in band. So I totally get the whole 2 parts.
Right.
Doing both. But so I started to raise my hand again and answer the questions correctly. And the teacher stopped the whole entire class of, we'll say, 30 students, and he looked over at me and he's like, "Where did you come from?" I thought to myself, I didn't say this out loud, but I thought, you know, "Sir, I've been here this entire time. You haven't seen me."
Yeah.
So having these safe spaces for girls, young female students in also the high school age is a space to go and say, "Hey, like, has anyone else dealt with bullying or harassment from a teacher?" Or, you know, it could be even worse, as we mentioned on the start of the show, that yes, we've all come from a mother, we've all come women, and sometimes the home not great.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that a safe space in the school is the only a young girl has. There could be violence at home. There could be, like, the young girl could even be self-harming. And it could be a lot more severe than just being teased, you know, just being bullied, which is also wrong.
Right.
So to have these safe spaces that are facilitated by teachers that get training from me on how to do it, it'll just make a better world. Like, that's the first pillar, or the last pillar, however you want to look at it, of the 4 that I've created. And that's recognizing the impact of facilitating these safe spaces for young female students today. Like, think if I had a safe space in my OAC year, my grade 13 year in Ontario, after this teacher told me that, and I could have gone to this safe space and say, how do I deal with this? How can I build back my confidence and my courage and, you know, live my real brave self? And then even start working on mentorship and, you know, mentoring other young ladies in the school that may be having some problems. So that's, in a nutshell, why these safe spaces are important, and that recognizing the impact of facilitating now and think about what's coming 5 years from now.
I like what you said, and I know we're going to dive deeper into this conversation, but the idea that your teacher didn't see you, and so how does that translate to a student? So when you don't feel seen, what do you feel? That's a very interesting question that I know you'll dive into a little bit later. But you know, and not just, I mean, I know we're focusing on women, but I think there are many students, whether it be race, gender, culture, sex, that who go to school every day, and they blend in, but they never actually feel like they've been seen by anyone. And what does that do to your identity and your self-worth?
That brings the identity of self, that brings the belief of belonging, of self down. You know, here in Alberta, they were talking, the government, they were talking about raising the class sizes to, we'll say, 45 students.
Oh, wow.
And I was thinking, I like, lost my mind for a minute. Like, you're going to raise class sizes. Here's what's going to happen. You raise class sizes, the attendance rate of students is going to go down. The performance rate, the test score rate of students is going to go down. And sadly, what potentially can go up is the rate of teenagers and students attempting suicide.
Yeah.
Because they're not feeling seen or heard or, acknowledged even. They're just a number in the classroom. Now, granted, in university, yes, university is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Yet, in that pre-university age, that high school, that elementary school age, having class sizes of 45 blows my mind. So keeping class sizes lower, you're going to raise the test scores, you're going to raise the attendance level, and you're going to lower the students who are thinking or even attempting to die by suicide.
Wow.
So right?
Yeah.
I know this is like deep and kind of dark.
No, I love it. Well, this is one of the things about this platform is that, this platform is not just for teachers and leaders, but anybody who has a strong belief in the value of education for all children. And so I think one of the things that we don't do oftentimes is get down to the real deal conversations to really address the issues that are impacting students and their ability to learn. That's why I think what you're saying is powerful. And I think it's very prevalent and needed that we have this conversation right now. So thank you.
You're welcome. And hello, people watching. I see some people.
Yeah. So I want to give people a shout out because they want to be seen and they want to be heard. So let's see. Miss Jackson, Miss Patterson, Miss Threet, Mr. Reynolds, Professor Reynolds. I see you on here. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, it's been a pleasure. Remember, get in here. If you have a comment or a question from Mrs. Hutton, feel free to dive in and post it in the chat, and I will make sure that your question or your comment is addressed. Ms. Holmes, also good evening to you. I see that you're in here. This is a real conversation, people. And so far, I'm getting chills, like just talking. So I need to stop talking and keep asking questions so I can learn and listen.
So take notes. So
this is a two-part question. And so I want to deal with it because I know you deal with leaders and teachers both. But I want to talk about first the teachers. How is it that a teacher can create a safe space for female students? And then we'll dive into the question about how does it look, what does it look like for a leader?
Yes. So I've already touched base on one of the 4 pillars, which is that recognizing piece. The other parts to it is that having a safe space in the school where the young female student can feel protected, safe, and encouraged to ask for help. And this pillar goes along with the value or the virtue of compassion. Having compassion for your students, being able to acknowledge them and welcome them into your space. Working with teachers, the program I'm just finished developing, actually, I even go so far as to say, what would the space look like? Like, design it, become an interior designer for a few minutes. And think of what it would look like, because you want it to be welcoming. You want it to be not feeling like they're in school, even though they are still in school. And you want it to be a safe space where they're encouraged to open up. And if you can have compassion for your student, that's part of it. The second part, the second pillar, is change the dynamic from teacher-led to student-led. So this is all about being brave and being bold, both of you, for the teacher who's facilitating and the student. She's being brave and coming to you and saying, I need help, I've been cutting myself. Or I need help because I just was attacked in the locker room. Mm-hmm. And you, the teacher, facilitating this, being brave and bold to, as a business teacher of mine said a couple years ago, you're going to zipit.com and listen. Let student lead. And we do an activity in the program I just developed about what are some open-ended questions you can think of that you can ask. And the third pillar is, and this is where it gets a little bit, I know there's a line for teachers about how much they can share with the student. Yet in this space, it's gonna do this. It's gonna be a little more gray.
Yeah.
So you want to share the lived experiences of topics that the young female students are coming to you with, to bring that connection and that vulnerability to the safe space. So for example, Dr. Christopher, you said you were also bullied as a child. If you are in this room facilitating this space, feel free to say, yes, when I was your age, I was whatever happened to you. I was bullied, or I was called names, or so on and so forth. And then the young female student will be able to relate. And this is the virtue or the value of vulnerability and being vulnerable and sharing and opening up a little bit. Like if I had a teacher in high school or in elementary school that said, yeah, you know what, when I was your age, I was also picked on and teased, and I also, there was one teacher, she never said it to me, but she also had, she was rather developed top, and maybe she had something happen to her as well, but she never said anything to me. And then, as I said earlier about the recognizing, the value or the virtue for that one is kindness. Show kindness.
It made me think, so it now it's like almost twofold. And then we'll dive into the question about leaders. So when you talk about safe spaces for female students, you also have to have a safe space for female practitioners and teachers to feel vulnerable and open to share. And I like what you said about being brave and being bold, yet vulnerable and open to these students. And I think that's important, because if it's not set up, if the space and the openness isn't set up to foster it by the leader, leadership is very important to me. If it doesn't happen, it's not set up and established by the leader, this will never work. It will never work. So I want you to kind of talk about why the leader is so important in this area, especially in terms of not just fostering the openness, but establishing the parameters in which it can happen by a teacher for a student.
Oh, for sure. So this is something also talk about, is the leadership or the administration, the principals in the school. That's the area we're talking about now. And it starts at the top, it doesn't start bottom up. So it starts from your principal, or even the area administrator, or the superintendent of the area where you live, or the city where you live. And it starts with them, and even, let's go big. Like it starts with the government, the education ministers here in Canada, or the provinces, and then your officials for education. I forget the right term, yet your state officials that are in charge of education for the United States.
Yeah, so they're called superintendents, just state superintendents here. Yeah,
so state superintendents, getting to them and saying, how are you doing with being open with your principals or your other superintendents? How are you being vulnerable? Are you opening up? Are you sharing? And then it trickles down and down and down. There's an activity that, when I was a girl, growing up, one thing where I could go for my safe space was actually being involved in Girl Guides, or in the United States, Girl Scouts. So I would go away to camp every summer. And one year, the theme for the whole camp was "Caught You Being Good." So a leader, a Girl Guide leader, caught you doing good something, you would get like a little certificate or a little bead on a bracelet, like you're collecting beads all week kind of thing. And that. So bringing that idea of that activity into a school, starting with the principal and higher up coming down. The principal acknowledging they see their staff, they acknowledge their staff, they celebrate their staff, especially right now. Goodness gracious, COVID has now been here for a year in wherever part of the world you are. And I know teachers and principals and administrators are struggling. What do we do? How the flip-de-dip Do we get things done? How do I help my student? Well, how are you being kind to your student?
Yeah.
How are you being open and vulnerable? And some teachers who are listening and some administrators who are watching right now, what I'm going to say next, you're quite possibly going to say, no, cannot do. What if, just for even a month, you take the academic portion, the spelling, the grammar, the geography, the core subjects, and throw them out the window for a month? And bring in, how are you doing today? Is there anything you want to talk about? You know, in Alberta here, I saw a statistic recently, and it's 1 in 5 teenagers are dealing with a mental health illness or challenge or struggle.
Wow.
Kids talk.
Yeah.
Kids need to get their emotions out. And because of social media and because of the way the world is right now, a lot of schools are not in physical session. It's all online. So, as I said, the teachers are going to say no, but I strongly encourage you to think about it at least and consider it. Push the academics aside for right now and get to the heart of your students.
I think it's so important. Jesus, you just said so many things. I'm trying to keep myself together, but this question, it seems very simple, but I think it's very profound. How are you being kind to your students? And in this world of ed policy where accountability is super high and assessment is super high, I think we get caught up in all of the policies and the practices of doing school that we forget that we're actually serving people who have hearts and emotions and feelings, and we somehow put those things on the back burner. And to kind of segue slightly into our next question, I know that many schools across this country, across the globe, are really focusing on this whole child perspective, especially the social and emotional impact or parameters as it relates to what students need to be successful to learn. I know here in the state of Georgia in the U.S., it is a new initiative here for us, but we're still trying to wrap our minds around what that looks like as we position it next to the academics, right? As you said. So they're not ready to push it to the side, but they want to somehow integrate both of those together, but they don't know how to do it because we've placed so much emphasis on the learning and the contents and the standards that it's a challenge for teachers to say, I believe in what you're saying, but give me the tools to do it and do it well so that the accountability for my scores won't drop and they will hopefully increase if I begin to infuse this social and emotional learning piece that you're speaking of, dear sir and dear ma'am. So what impact does the creation of safe spaces have on social and emotional health for female students?
If you want to talk percentages, you can
Sure.
take it and say a 50%, barely scratching the surface, barely getting by, barely feeling confident in herself and knowing who she is and being able to speak her truth, to skyrocketing it to 100+.
Oh, wow.
And you just asked about a tool. So here's a really quick one. And it maybe will take 5 minutes. You can do it at the start of the day, or depending on the type of school and situation, you could even do it at the start of every class. There's a song by Heather Small called Proud. It's about 3.5 minutes long. Play the song and then go around the room and say, what have you done today that you're proud of? And then everybody celebrates. That's actually the more important part, is celebrating. For a few years during the day, I worked, one of my day jobs is I worked with students living with disabilities. The whole school was that way. And I was in the grade 6 classroom as a teacher's assistant. And I started this initiative right towards the end of the year with my teacher's permission. And I would play this song. And then we went around the room. What have you done today that you're proud of? And remember, all these kids live with disabilities of some sort. And, you know, one of the young girls said, I'm proud that I asked my mom to help me tie my shoe. Or
Wow.
I'm proud that I did my zippers up by myself. So it can be the smallest little things, and then watches of the students celebrate each other is amazing. To the point where this school went from pre-K grade 6. And the grade 6 students, for their grad, we asked them, what song do you want to come into, like to march into the gymnasium to? And they all said Heather Small Proud.
Wow.
That made that much of an impact to them.
Wow.
A little, one of my tools of what you can do. You don't have to play the song. You can just give a minute and ask the kids, what have you done today that you're proud of?
Yeah.
And watch the cycle, watch the encouragement dynamic. And again, you're turning it a bit more to student-led than teacher-led.
And that's going to be an issue. You know, we talk about the sage on the stage idea, but releasing the control. So basically what you're saying is this won't happen if you're always wanting to be in control and not releasing some of that power back to the student.
True.
Do you see that as being one of the challenges? And we'll talk about other challenges in terms of creating safe spaces. But is that one of the, would you say, is that one of the bigger challenges, or is it just one of the minute challenges?
Having the teachers relax a little and let the student lead. Yeah, that can be a challenge. Like I'm thinking of my teachers, like growing up, like a couple of my teachers were very much by the book and very much, okay, we have to do it this way, la la la. And then I had a couple of teachers that were a little bit more, you know, not as regiment with things that are going on. So it depends on the teacher, really. Yet, if the teacher who's very, okay, here's a question, teachers. If you're a teacher who likes that regiment, that rule, that sit quiet, do your work, no talking, how are their test scores? What's going on? Like, what else is kind of going on? Like, maybe a recommendation is to maybe let them have, depending on how long your classes are, but I'm going to say 10 minutes. You let them have 10 minutes of just that social banter, that social interaction. And then the teacher can come in and say, hey, let's have a discussion about whatever we're discussing. There's a really, really good movie. I watched it before Christmas. And it's a true story. And it's called The Freedom Writers. And it's based on a teacher who has journals given to all the students. And if you know of the story, the students are all have crazy backgrounds, lots of crazy things going on. But this journal, she gave all the kids a journal and said, okay, you're going to write in this every day. And if you want me to read it, put it on this pile. If you don't want me to read it, put it over here. And I will just read it. I'm not grading you. I'm not judging you. This is just a safe space, a safe container, a safe modality for you to get your feelings out. And the change that happened with these students was remarkable. It's amazing. It's one of my favorite.
Yeah, that's a beautiful movie, actually. I've seen it a few times. Because I am an advocate for students having a voice. It's funny that we're having this conversation. So, like I said, I am a consultant. And one of the things that I really encourage my leaders or my teachers to do is to make sure that students have an active role as a participant in the learning cycle. That includes being able to share their experiences, share examples that relate to them as they can see themselves in the curriculum. So today in one of the classrooms, I had a well-intentioned teacher who loves his students, has compassion for them, but fails to see that he does all the talking. And the students do very little communicating, one, to him as a teacher, as well as to each other. Even to the point, and I pointed this out, I don't think that he realizes, but when he asks questions, he also answers his own questions within like 2 seconds. There's no wait time, and I think the assumption is, oh, they know the answer, and I want to go ahead and get moving through the lesson so they can actually do some work. But I communicated to him today the importance of giving them a voice, even if you think they know it. Give all of your students throughout the week a chance to have a voice, to hear themselves confidently give an answer, right or wrong, it doesn't matter, but they need that space.
Yeah, they need that discussion, they need that connection, and that feeling confident that what they need to say matters. And I heard someone say a while ago too, is about the art of the pause. So yes, ask the question, and then be okay with no talking, no nothing for about 5 seconds. Or even more. And don't say anything, because someone will answer.
That's hard for some teachers. They have to fill the space for whatever reason. They need or want to be the only voice in the room. And that is an issue for me of control. And so I really, really battle with helping them to release that, because as you said, if we look at what you're doing in terms of practice and we look at student performances, we may see an issue, one, because they just don't have a voice. And you're making the assumption that the information is being transferred and it's being lost in translation.
Right.
It really is. And the other thing about the journals, imagine if students were able to journal and share their learning in their journal. Oh man, that totally changes it. And I don't think people see a journal as a journal being a safe space itself.
Yeah, totally. I've been journaling since I was in grade 4 or 5. And I actually, they're not in arm's reach, but I actually have them here with me in Calgary when I moved. And I've read them. Well, yes, there's one I don't have because I think I threw it out. But I have like my grades 6, 7, and till now journals with me. And, journaling is cathartic, is a way to communicate, a way to express, it is a safe space. And a point that I thought to mention as well is kids learn many different ways. Some kids learn by actually talking it out or discussion. And kids also learn a lot of the time by doing. So doing whatever the activity is, making it more interactive somehow. I know it's hard in high school, especially like we'll say math, but how can you make a student be more engaged? How can you have them learning by doing?
Yeah, that's super important for me. I am a past science teacher, so that speaks my language when you say learn by doing, because the hands-on approach is super important. They can't learn if they don't really engage in the practice of whatever you're teaching. So yes, kudos for all those science teachers out there. Listen to what she's saying. It's real, it's true, and it makes a difference. They need to do it. Math teachers, they need to do it. And just to go even deeper, if you want your students to demonstrate kindness, guess what, teachers? You have to do it. Be the model.
Yeah. And then it also goes back to, and this may sound a little woo-woo for your listeners, and so you're being kind to your students, but how are you being kind to yourself?
Oh.
That's a whole other topic.
That's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother topic.
We'll have to come back and we'll focus on being, kind and much to self.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's a whole thing, and like, just think if you could have a safe space in your school right now for young female students. Think of where they will be 10 years from now, 20 years from now. They might be the next Kamala Harris in the United States. They might be, you know, a famous woman in history, science actually, here in Canada, is Dr. Roberta Bondar. And Roberta Bondar was the first female, I think female in general, but the first female to go to space. Wow. And fun fact too, she was also a Girl Guide. So getting involved in the sciences, there's the theme of STEM, science, math, engineering, and technology. You know, go into that. If a girl student showing interest in, also there's coding, like computer coding and stuff, celebrate that. Get to know what your students in general. But I'm a woman and I focus on girls because I'm a woman. I've been asked that. Amy, why are you only focusing on the female students? Because I'm female.
Right.
And I know boys and young men in schools also need support. I know that. Yet that's not my expertise.
Right.
So
that's not your experience.
No, it's not my experience. Yet I will do talks on large scale to like a whole grade 7, 8 group, girls and boys. But these safe spaces are for those young female students to say, I was just attacked in the locker room, or I've been cutting myself, or my boyfriend hit me.
I agree. And that was going to be the next question, but I think you answered it beautifully. That's not your experience. You have a commitment to support young women. There are other people out there that can support young men of a different race, young women of a different race, but in general, you support the advocacy for safe spaces, but specifically for those for young women. And I think it's important if we think about just the history of women across this world, how limited and boxed in they've been, to know now we have women going to the moon. Yeah. We have women serving as vice presidents and leaders of nations and countries. This was not something that we saw prevalent, hundreds of years ago. And so, imagine what these women could be if we give them the liberty to just be themselves.
Yeah, like I know when I was growing up, and when you were growing up, Dr. Christopher, like there were no women in politics, really, in the 1980s. Canada did have a female prime minister for like 3 months when I was in high school. But then she stepped down or something, she got voted out or whatever happened. Yeah, so women in politics, science, places, go watch the movie Hidden Figures. That's, one of my other favorite movies for Women's History Month and Black History Month combined. It's a beautiful movie. Yeah, and just you, Christopher, Dr. Christopher, this has been awesome. Do you have any more questions or?
I got one more. I have one more question.
Okay.
What would you say to somebody in education, whether it be a leader or a teacher, maybe even a parent, or maybe somebody who's sitting on the school board or sitting in central office? What would you say to encourage them to make safe spaces for their female students? Or if you want to speak in general, for their marginalized students?
So, that's a good question. I like it. If you are someone who identifies as a marginalized person in general, so if you identify as the part of the LGBT community or a different culture, ethnic background, think about your growing up years. Think about your school years. Were you safe? Get quiet and still. And were you safe in school in those growing up years? If the answer is no, that is why safe spaces for young female students are needed in every school across Canada and the United States and around the world.
I mean, we could talk all night, honestly, but we can't because we have things to do tomorrow, and yes. I think we don't want to talk all night. But this is, I was so excited when you reached out to me about wanting to be a guest. I didn't know exactly what you want to talk about, but then once you shared what your expertise was, I felt like it just fell perfectly in line for this month in March, and perfectly in line with where we are in this world. As I encourage people every day in the work that I do, and even on this show, to embrace diversity and inclusivity. And diversity now is not what it used to be. It is not black and white. It is not male, female. It is embracing the cultures of so many people, even down to young students that are high tech. That is a different culture by itself that many teachers can't relate to because that's not how they grew up, but it is a culture. And so when we think diversity, it's about embracing everything that comes to you in that classroom and honoring who your students are and what they believe in, including their experiences and how they identify. Gay, black, young, Generation Z, go, whatever that is, it's not your place to, in my opinion, love is not about acceptance. Love is just love. And I honor who you are without having to agree with all that you are, but I still love you and accept who you are as a person and everything you bring to the table. My agreement is not needed to validate you.
True.
Not at all. So I appreciate this conversation. I'm going to have you back again because I know I have a lot of questions that people are going to be asking. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. But for those of you that are on YouTube, once again, I hope that you were in the comments, which you were. But you can subscribe to this channel. Her contact information is in the comment section on YouTube. It is also in the comment section, in the description on Facebook. If you can't see it right now, guess what? I want to give it to you right now. So take a few minutes, look at it. Her email address and all the information with LinkedIn, Facebook, even her website is listed right here. You can screenshot it, reach out to her if you have questions or you want to further this conversation, but she will be back. Trust me, she will be back. We will be continuing this conversation because it was wonderful and it was needed. So I hope you guys enjoyed Teacher Talks tonight. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes. It has been a pleasure to host Miss Aime Hutton, and I can't wait to have her back to share with you all to keep enlightening you about creating safe spaces and honoring who we are as individuals. Period. Point blank. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, what do I say? Be safe and be blessed. I'll see you next time. Thanks, Aime, again. See you soon. Goodbye, everybody.